Well, buongiorno again. I'm getting quite good at this Italian now. I don't say buonasera in the morning anymore,
No,
at least.
no.
Now, we're in Venice, obviously, at the beautiful Bauer Palazzo, and I'm sitting with Francesca Bortolotto Possati. Is that pretty good?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Not bad Italian pronunciation.
No, sorry.
Now, Francesca is the chairman and president of the Bauer, let's say, group of hotels, but that
Right.
sounds very corporate, so we won't call it a group. But you're a mother as well?
Yes, I'm a mother as well.
You run these amazing hotels. How do you do the juggling act?
Well, as I said, the juggling is actually something that's, I believe, comes very much in the DNA of a woman. And one of the things that I tried in order to make everything work is try to get everybody involved in my life. And so I tried to involve my children since first.
How old are your children?
Well, right now my son is 24 and my daughter is 20.
Oh, excellent.
So they've grown up. But in the last 10 years, which is when it's been starting, this big adventure, not because Bauer was not part of me since I was born, but just because I actually initiated a very strong challenge, and I actually at that time I had the possibility to just sell everything I inherited, or just devote my life, my energies, and of course a lot of investment into trying to bring back what it was when my grandfather was alive.
Sure.
And so of course I got my children involved, and they say, what shall I do? You know, of course I knew what I wanted to do, but I needed their support in that sense, because they were still younger, and of course they were so much into it and very supportive. I remember, my daughter was young, very young, but I took her traveling with me, and she was great PR, and because like a mascot of every event, and so they both have been always being part of this.
Are they involved in the business now? Or?
Well, my daughter, she just started university in a business school, which I hope that when she's going to be done with it, she will be kind of helping out, which I really would need someone to help out. My son is, they've always been in the back, just some very important decision, somehow they're discussed over lunch and dinner, because inadvertently, I have a lot of meetings, but I try to have either lunch or dinner with them at some point, either separate. And so we discuss about things that goes on.
And you'll say, oh, I'm doing this, and say, oh, Mom, you
now.
shouldn't do that.
Or actually, just looking at their eyes, which are much cleaner than mine, sometimes you kind of bring back with you some experience, and they see things much straighter, like with people, your immediate impression, sometimes, it's very important.
I describe that as a bit like, I've done a lot of consulting work, okay? And if I hold my hand right in front of your face, you can't see my fingerprints.
Absolutely. So
and
you have
just
to go
need somebody to do
out.
that.
Yeah.
And kids are great at
that.
that.
And these are great because they look at from very far. They're not influenced by what you see every day, so you don't see right or wrong, left, as you just say. So anyway, bringing back, so my son, on the other hand, he graduated in business school.
Oh, excellent.
But he's actually
in Italy?
In Italy. They were both born in America, but my son has most of his education in America and Italy, and my daughter mostly in Italy at that point. But they're both bilingual. But he just started his own business, so-called business.
Funny that.
It's a little project in design,
and
he's made a brief of fashion for men's and women.
Oh, I saw a brochure in...
Yeah, exactly. And he has an atelier where he's just behind the corner of the Bauer. And I let him develop his energy. There's a lot of Venetian heritage in the concept he's trying to...
And the fashions, the styles.
Well, the style, the material, the lines, and bringing back, whatever is the artisanship of the Venetian tradition, which are silks and velvet and lace and glass and details.
Beautiful.
And so far, we have been presenting this this is only a year and a half project, so it's a baby thing. Been presented in Paris and in Milan.
My goodness.
And in Russia, and now our next project will be United States.
Incredible.
Very, very excited.
You're crossing everything. But tell me, your family background, what was it? You were brought up in this house.
Well, I was brought up. I'm Venetian,
yes.
and you know, and the hotel was actually part of my grandfather estates, and so having an hotel in the back of your somehow it's an extension of your home.
Yes.
I actually didn't live in the Bauer, you know.
No.
We have our own palazzo, but having an hotel is always. Again, something that you find it very natural to.
I love that you said we have our own palazzo. It's beautiful. Well done. Yeah. So, but the hotel was ingrained in your life, really, wasn't it?
Yes, because you know, in the hotel we used to have like the formal events. There was one room which actually now is part of the used by everyone, which was only used by my grandfather, and it was only held for dinner or luncheons that went from very sad event like a funeral or very formal things. You know, when I decided to get married, that's where we had our presentation. You know, things like that. You know, were held more at the hotel than at home. Funny enough, yeah, it's very interesting. And then you know, any problem you would have, you pick up the phone and call the concierge. You know, that goes from a plane ticket or a train ticket or having the theater anywhere in Europe, or when you couldn't get anything by yourself. You know, it was much easier to call up. You know.
Being brought up in Venice as a teenager must have been quite amazing. I mean, I'm sure you travelled a lot, but...
it's something that, you know, it's just... You don't perceive the difference until you actually go out and come back. You know, it's something that you take it for granted, for normal. It's only, I think, in the last 10, 15 years that Venice has just acquired these things, that everything is under, like, a big... flashing lands, you know. You know, for us, there are things that, as you know, for someone who lives here, it's just don't take it too much for granted, but you know it's there, so it's part of you. And when you go out and come back, then you realize, oh my God, but all of this is just so important for your life that you cannot live without it. And so I see it with my children, because for as much as they travel all over the world, you know, they're kind of addicted to Venice. And they feel it like a heritage they cannot, you know, go by and say, okay, forget it. Maybe if you were born in another country, you could stay out of it and live out of it. Venice is something like you have to go back to it, because it's just a lympha that develops.
How do you deal with this, though, in terms of, you know, being a hotelier
very demanding.
now?
It's very demanding living in Venice.
But you're a hotelier as well, with you know, a fairly large property, about 115 rooms, I think, in total.
Well, in the total now it's 250.
So 250 rooms.
But we're a niche of not more than 80 per hotel.
Yes.
So it's actually small identity property. Yeah.
But how do you, you know, because Venice is, you know, they use the word under threat. I mean, but there's got to be a balance somewhere between the preservation of the history of Venice and the numbers of people that come here and the environmental issues. I met Mr. Morandina. Yeah, and we had a chat about that yesterday a little bit. And it's a fine balance in lots of places throughout the world. It's not unique to Venice. I mean, there's a lot of places where it can't cope with volume.
It's a balance which, to my opinion, hasn't been held in a proper way yet. Nobody has actually... It's not going to be easy to solve, but it should be controlled and run somehow in a different way. I think we all would have known that, you know, eventually in years things will progress and enlarge itself. So we should really try to sit down and see what we want to do with everyone wanting to come to Venice at the same time. So this is something that I don't think has been extremely well controlled or decided, you know. And sometimes you have to make a popular decision in order to preserve the identity of a place. Otherwise, you know, Venice has many difficulties today. Well, first of all, 50,000 inhabitants to 120 when I was born, which, you know, it's not...
So there were 120,000 inhabitants when you were a child, now it's 50, wow.
Yeah, and this makes a difference by itself. On the other hand, the number of tourists that are incoming every day, so the day trip, as we call it, has kind of
it's rocketed.
More, gone up to the star. Not this year, maybe, because you know, but actually, it's really wild. There is no control over that, and so this also create a very difficult running of the city, because you know, people that come in for the day, they leave very little to the city, and they use all the services that the city can offer.
But also the quality of the visit by a lot of these people, because there's so many people, and it's not, as I said, it's not unique to Venice. It's the same in Florence and Rome and York and Bath and places like that. Because there's so many people in these areas, you're viewing history over the heads of thousands of people instead of maybe a few hundred, or so the quality goes down, doesn't it?
Definitely the quality goes down, because most of the people, and I don't want to sound too too tough in this, that come in, as you're saying, on a day trip, they don't even choose to come to Venice most of the time. It's just a day trip, whatever it is.
Yes.
And sure, Rome has the same problem, but Rome is not so fragile, because it's so large, and you have buses, and somehow you have a wider container that can see things like looking at the video. Venice needs to just go through things, and sometimes people do not really realize what they get back after they've gone the day. Sometimes a great video would make it even better, because there is no place to sit, there is no place to actually hold or park, somewhere to hold on this incredible long march, through the city.
It's true, yes.
And so if you cannot get away some kind of identity of what you've gone into it, then it's almost useless. And again, the city lose their special identity. Because for me, Venice is a city not for short-term stay.
No.
It's a city for long-term stay, because the first 3 days you almost have more disadvantage than advantages. You don't come to Venice only to see the Ponte di Rialto or San Marco Square. You come here to experience a way of living, and something which is beyond the calle or beyond the beautiful buildings that you perceive after the third, fourth day.
That's right. You're scratching the surface until then.
Right. Because before that you just go see things that you could actually see them in great paintings or in other ways. But when you after the fourth day you say something is changing on me. You don't know what it is, but it's actually some kind of a lifestyle, a pace that all of this water and stone gets to you.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
So we have to stretch the stay of the visitor, which if we go back at the beginning of the century, the other century, people would stay 3 months, 4 months. Even in hotels, people would stay for over a month. Wow. And now this is only, it's 2.3.
2.3 days. Yeah.
Terrible. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, look, talking about hotels and great hotels and so on, I mean, Venice has a reputation for some great hotels, okay?
Right.
Obviously, we've got the Cipriani, we've got the Gritti. Now, I didn't know about the Bauer, to be honest with you, right? Okay, but maybe that's my ignorance. But here we are. You've got Palladio across the lagoon. We've got the Casanova. We've got Palazzo here. We've got the Bauer. What an amazing mix of hotels. Tell me about the vision and the passion here. And we met with Armando before, and I asked him a question. I said, what's it like dealing with this passionate woman, right, and who's a visionary, who will say, I want to do this, but where does it all come from? I mean, it's from your background and so on.
Well, first of all, it's almost something I felt as a duty, first in respect of my grandfather, whatever he was at the beginning of the 900 when he invested in real estate in Venice, and he was an important entrepreneur in a city where at that time during the war there weren't that many. So he actually, when he passed away, in the 80s, he left such a very important assets for the city, and the Bauer has always been recognized, even before him, by Mr. Bauer, as a point of reference for the city. It's been always held by someone who was very linked into the inner life of Venice. And yes, you're talking about other properties, but they all belong to chains, as you said before. And now more than ever by people that has nothing to do with the city.
There's no passion.
Exactly. Well, there's no identity to, there's no Venetian, and this is almost like a burden, if you may say. And this is what brought me to enlarge and expand, and just to try to preserve and give identity to every building. So when I, step in, and I had this huge property, which I call like a vessel, like a ship. My grandfather was a ship owner, therefore he made this like a ship, And I had a more contemporary side, and then the ancient building. So I had a big question mark. How could I turn this, and have people understand why we have so many mixing of things.
Yes.
And so that's why I started to separate, like the towers of the world of Astoria, making the palazzo as it is historically, and the hotel, the Bauer, as it was done by my grandfather in the 1940s, with what the 40s was in Italy at the time.
Yes.
So it's not, a very Stalinesque facade, as some of the guy called it about 20 years ago. It's actually a representation of what the 40s architecture is, even in a city like Venice, which is everybody's romance, but it's not only left in the Settecento, not only the Serenissima. There are people that has been building, living, and going through the styles and centuries with their own identity. And that's why, for me now, the Bauer Hotel has a great example, and people actually enjoy when they know what this is all about. It's not just the bad copy of a 700, So we have two places, and the Palladio also. I found this building, which was there, and I was so abandoned for so very long, and I thought quite profoundly what to do about it. It could have been turned in and I don't want to criticize, a very cheap attraction, or turn into a destination which weren't fit for the identity how it was born. And that's why I purchased it, and I try to deliver a new way of interpreting the Giudecca, which I personally love, which another Venice into Venice,
It's
and
a quieter part of Venice, isn't it?
It's the garden, it's the resort of Venice. Giudecca has always been the place where the Venetian would go in the summertime, because it's, believe it or not, it's not so far away, but it has a complete different, even climate, even different way of living. It's much more relaxed. It's not as busy. This is the city, and that is the resort.
But it's a beautiful city. But what about for Francesca now, sitting here with these wonderful hotels, okay? In fact, they're not hotels, really. These feel like a home.
Yeah, they're boutiques and they're homes.
But they are homes. I mean, when you walk into the rooms here, whether it's in Casanova or Palladio or here, or or in the Bauer itself, there's obviously a mark, okay? And you're not a hotelier per se, okay? But you've got a passion and the furnishings and the
passion
fabrics
for homes,
and the walls. We just go, wow. What's the future for you guys?
Well, this is a good question, because I've put this question to me at the beginning of this year, because it's been 10 years and I had a vision, and I think I kind of got through what I wanted to do.
We're sitting in it.
And now I say, what's going to be in the next 10 years? And this is, what I'm trying to find my goal, which of course is just to keep consistency, because that's in life. It's it's easy to go, but then you have to stay through many ups and downs and boring. And this
and
is
your personal life as well. I mean, how do you keep the two things parallel?
Also,
yes, they fall apart.
So it's definitely, I have a new development which goes into apartments with hotel use.
Just by the Palladio?
Yes, by the Palladio.
Giudecca,
And this huge garden, which I'm just about to bring it back to history, and the garden is going to be double, and I'm trying to bring back all the plants and everything that was there, like many, many, many years ago.
Yes.
And this is a very challenging project, finally working on nature and plants and which I cannot control, because they are controlling me in the same way.
And you've also got the whole historical side of things here in the city to cope with as well, and bureaucracy and...
Well, the bureaucracy, I try not to look at it, otherwise I lose all my enthusiasm. But it's there, and I cannot, and I'm trying to find a good sense of where the bureaucracy intervene, because sometimes things, if it takes too long, a little longer, it makes you reason why you choose that project. And if it's good, the time you have, it's good to change it and to implement it and make it even better.
Sure.
Because sometimes you take a decision very quickly, which is maybe the right one, but a little time can make it even enforced and maybe blend it a little bit.
Would we ever see a Bauer Palazzo or a Bauer property elsewhere in the world?
This is my project. Where? This is a big question mark.
It will feel right when you know it.
Well, I know in the heart that, because I've lived for so many years in America, that New York could be the city where I would feel
New York
at
as
home.
well. Yes.
And for me, New York is home like Venice, and they're two cities very similar in some way, and they have same kind of energy, and people wants to be in New York or Venice before dying for different reasons, but very similar. And then another country which I've been very, intrigued by in the last few years, it's actually Moscow.
Interesting.
I have to still, go through with that, but I see in Moscow a lot of potential, maybe in the next 10, 20 years.
And who knows, we may encourage you to think
Come
about
to
Sydney.
Oh, well, Sydney, I really decided I want to come with my children. I need a very long stretch, because you can't come for 3 or 4 days.
No.
But definitely, I hope next year I will be coming to. I would like to make a trip to Australia because it's so beautiful. I have so many friends.
Good.
And why not?
Well, Francesca, there's an open welcome for you in Sydney, and the Bauer model would fit in beautifully in Sydney. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And I know you're a very busy woman and a lot of things to do. And just to close, absolutely stunning properties, and thank you for your hospitality as well.
Thank you for coming.
Grazie.
Grazie.
And this is John Alwyn-Jones reporting for Travel Mode TV from the Bauer Palazzo in Venice with Francesca Bortolotto Possati.
Correct.
Good.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.